At the risk of sounding hypercritical and maybe being labeled a black pillar, I just want to go over some of the things that Carroll said on the Joe Rogan podcast. I think overall it was a good thing that Carroll and Joe Rogan talked about situations where there are historical events that have happened that we can point back to that shows just how bad the government actually is. And hey, I agree. No matter how conspiracy minded or paranoid you might be, what the government is doing is far worse than you can possibly imagine, far worse than even history records, because there's a lot of things that are done in darkness. But even the things that are done in the light that we have access to information and resources on, that is bad enough. But I want to go over this little part right here. I want to play it in context so you can get the drift of what he's saying, because he suggests that Donald Trump is in the midst of executing a coup against Benjamin Netanyahu. And here's the build up to that.
American sentiment turned really harshly against Israel in the 80s there, and they realized we don't need to win just the kinetic war. We need to win the ideological war on the global scale. Because if we don't win that ideological war, the whole world will turn against us and call us a colonial project, which I would argue they kind of are, but that's not the point here. And I don't mean to say I'm necessarily right about my perspective on that. But that's when they switched to a propaganda war, and they started targeting the United States with propaganda. And they hired the world's top propagandists to teach Israelis and Israeli military officials and government officials how to communicate with the West and how to propagandize the West so that we would remain in the dark a little bit. That's why we have this veil and this anti-Semitism thing and this it's why you're not allowed to talk about it, because it evolved over time. And they eventually,
By the way, Trump is involved in that propaganda, and that is that he's basically made it illegal, anti-Semitism illegal. And what is anti-Semitism? Could it be speaking with disfavor when you talk about Israel and the Gaza situation? Could it be talking about how much Zionists are involved in our culture, in our music, in our movies, in our financial system?
Hired this guy that I think is called Howard Luntz. And Luntz,
it's Frank Luntz,
worked with the Israel Project. There's a report online that came out in 2009, I think, called the Israel Language Dictionary, the Israel American Language Dictionary, and it's basically a word for word. This is how you discuss the rockets raining down. This is how you discuss the settlements. This is how you discuss the occupation and the Palestine and all these things. And they use examples of words that work and words that don't work. And when you read it, you realize, like, holy shit, that's exactly what politicians have been saying on TV my entire life.
And he is right. It's a full-on propaganda campaign called the Global Language Dictionary. It's the Israel Project Global Language Dictionary. Let me read you some of this. The Israel Project's 2009 Global Language Dictionary manipulates language to obscure truth, justify human rights abuses, and shape global opinion on Israel's actions against Palestine. If that is not insidious, I don't know what is. In recent years, an increasing number of individuals and organizations have called attention to the disturbing proliferation of state-sponsored propaganda that shapes public opinion on critical issues. One such example, the Israel Project's Global Language Dictionary, authored by Republican strategist Frank Luntz, serves as a chilling guide on how to frame the conversation around Israel's actions in a way that seeks to sanitize acts of oppression and delegitimize any resistance. This is propaganda. This is the kind of propaganda that we expose all the time on this channel, and it's insidiously working on both the left and the right and invading the collective conscience of Americans and people throughout the world. This tactic is not just about semantics, it's about using language as a tool to delegitimize legitimate struggles for self-determination and justice, transforming them into threats against global security. This kind of propaganda campaign is what every single politician participates in, bar none, including Donald Trump.
And they use Obama as one example of really good words that work. You should talk like Obama because he's good at sort of empathizing with the other side and making us understand that, like, we're here for peace and they're the terrorists. And I say that to mean that we live inside this propagandized space because it's been essential to them for so long to protect that image in order to continue the deep state element of what they're doing. When I would argue that we would all be much better off if Bibi was fucking not there and we had a more sane person in charge of Israel that was actually there for peace and not there for whatever the fuck Bibi is doing. Well, and we could start to heal this thing and talk about it. And
most people in the general public aren't even aware that the Israeli people were protesting against Netanyahu before October 6th.
Yeah, he's about to get kicked out.
Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, and that it had been going on for a long time.
100%.
And then what happened on October 7th?
Yeah.
I suspect, I'm hoping I'm not blowing the lid on Trump's idea here. I kind of suspect that Trump is kind of in on a coup against Netanyahu right now. This is just my theory based upon the way he talked about like occupying Gaza and the way he's friends with Jared Kushner and the way he's friends with the Adelsons. I suspect that these powerful Jews, like the Adelson type people, are starting to realize that Netanyahu is kind of sinking this ship. And
now, here's what I have a problem with. Both Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll, they know their voices are going to go out to tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people, because this is going to be on the internet forever. It's already got like 1.5 million views just on the Joe Rogan podcast on YouTube, not counting Spotify. No telling how many people are going to listen to this. And they are actually suggesting that a political puppet like Donald Trump or Bibi Netanyahu or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, that these puppets are the actual reigning powers that have their hands on the levers and the controls of the gears that make America and the world work, when they're nothing more than puppets. You remove puppet Netanyahu and you're going to get another puppet who is going to bow down and kiss the ring of the elites that we don't even know about. So when you've got a guy suggesting that a complete Zio shill, Donald Trump, is staging a coup against another complete Zio shill, Netanyahu, is absolutely laughable. One of the things that I observed as I watched this entire podcast is they didn't mention the most dangerous terror organization, the most dangerous, powerful, and the wealthiest terror organization on the entire planet. How do you have a podcast dedicated almost entirely to conspiracies and you don't mention the Federal Reserve? There's a lot of things that they didn't mention. They don't mention at all the influence that Peter Thiel has on J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. Peter Thiel from Palantir Technologies, which you might as well call it an Israeli spy company. I'll go over this kind of stuff in another video because I want to do a second video on this Ian Carroll thing. I want to keep on going with this right here so that we can continue listening to what he says. Because you got to remember, both Joe Rogan and Ian Carroll voted for Zio Dawn.
He's kind of fucked it all up, and it's not going well for Israel in the public conversation. Like I can ratio just about anyone I want on Twitter over the Israel thing because the public sentiment is just shifting, and it's not healthy for anyone, for Jewish people or anyone else. And I'd suspect that the powerful Jewish people are starting to see that and are starting to scheme on how do we fucking get Netanyahu out of there and put someone in that can actually move us towards some sort of peace.
No. That if you were going to get rid of Netanyahu, the powers that shouldn't be, that control Israel, that control the United States Congress, that control the military-industrial complex, they're only going to put people in there. They're going to put political puppets like Netanyahu in there to serve their purposes, not to serve at the table of peace.
Because without a genuine desire for, like, Netanyahu is on fucking camera saying that they have propped up Hamas in the Gaza Strip because they don't want a real government in the Gaza Strip, because it's far better for them to run this occupation and to eventually take the land if Hamas is, that's not an exact quote. Everyone should look that up for themselves.
But not just propped up, but funded.
Exactly, yeah. And intentionally kept there.
Just when you hear that, you're like, well, what's the logic for funding Hamas? What logic?
Well, it's the exact same logic as us funding the Taliban.
Yeah.
It's the exact same logic.
Did you see
the exact
that?
same strategies.
And before we go on any further, who is responsible not only funding for the present day Taliban, not just for funding present day Hamas, who was involved in the creation of Hamas and Al-Qaeda and the Taliban? Oh, that's right. the United States. Oh, that's right, Israeli Defense Forces. So if they're creating this, then isn't it logical to ask the question, hey, isn't this kind of a Hegelian dialectic? They create the problem, wait for the fear-based reaction. Oh my God, there's Hamas terrorists. Oh my God, there's Al-Qaeda. Oh, they're bringing down buildings. This is horrible. And then step in to provide the pre-planned solution. Why aren't we talking about this on this podcast? And why aren't we talking about the fact, not the suggestion, but the fact that Donald Trump and Netanyahu are part of the propaganda, that they actually work for the Zio International Banking Cartel? Nobody's saying that. Nobody wants to admit that, hey, I voted for a guy who's actually bowing down and kissing the ring of the Federal Reserve.
Did you see that? Oh, God, I wish I would remember where it was happening, where someone had to say, are we really sending the Taliban $40 million a week?
Yeah.
And we were.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it happens over and over and over again. As we just are like, we're just sending money willy nilly to all these, like Ukraine, Israel, Taliban, you name it. Like, and those are just a small spattering. We've done it across the whole world, Indonesia, Central and South America.
And we've been doing it that way forever.
And it's this playbook of the deep state is a funny term. I think it's kind of time to retire it, because it's not the deep state. It's like this corporate, like transnational corporate criminal organization space where transnational corporations like the banks, like JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, they were banking Jeffrey Epstein. They don't answer to us. They're not American. They don't give a shit about America. Like,
you mean corporate multinational companies like BlackRock? Let me show you what Donald Trump said about BlackRock right here. He didn't mention BlackRock in his State of the Union address, but it turns out that the people who just bought 2 ports in the Panama Canal for $22.8 billion was BlackRock. Listen to this.
My administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals.
Oh, yeah, large American company. What American company is that, Donald? Oh, that's right, BlackRock. So Donald Trump and BlackRock have negotiated a deal where they're buying 2 ports in the Panama Canal. Is that pro-American? Sounds to me like a transnational corporate criminal organization.
Like transnational corporate criminal organization space where transnational corporations like the banks, like JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, they were banking Jeffrey Epstein. They don't answer to us. They're not American. They don't give a shit about America.
And we're not going to talk about the fact that Donald Trump is involved in all of this right here, and you voted for him?
They give a shit about money and power. And they're legally required to, because they're a public corporation. That's a whole BlackRock.
Yeah.
We could go down. It's crazy.
And so he just mentioned BlackRock. BlackRock is a corporate criminal, multinational corporate criminal organization and cartel that Donald Trump is working with.
So, like, when you look at it as people who have this globalist, and actually that's why people shit on Alex Jones for saying globalists. You know, like all the fucking anti-Jew people are like, just say the Jews. And it's like, no, dude, like there's way more going on here. And the tie that binds all of them together, the Klaus Schwabs of this world, the Jeff Bezoses, and I don't know, maybe Jeff's a good guy, I don't know. But like the people that don't think in terms of these are my people and I love them, but rather I'm like a piece of this global community of billionaires that like our job is just to make money and fucking control the world. Like Bill Gates is a great example.
Now they're going to mention Bill Gates, Charles Schwab. They're not going to mention Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Amazing what they are willing to ignore, what they're willing to drag into the spotlight and scrutinize and condemn, and rightly so, Bill Gates. But they're not going to drag into that same spotlight Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, all these corporate technocrats who want to change our world fundamentally and control it.
They live outside of our world. And
yes, they all do. Trump, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, BlackRock, the owners of BlackRock, Larry Fink, they all live outside of our world.
They do not give a shit if COVID kills 10,000 people or 100,000 people or 10 million people, whatever.
So what did he just promote the existence of right there?
I'm generalizing because obviously they are individuals and they each have their own perspective on what's going on. But it feels to me from researching, there's enough of them that are evil that they're doing some horrible things. And the ones that are a little less evil, maybe they know what they're in on. Maybe they only know some of it, because you don't have to disclose everything. In these kinds of plans, like for example, in a CIA plot to overthrow the government of Guatemala, you're not telling everyone the whole plan.
They didn't tell Smedley Butler.
No, they didn't tell him shit.
Right.
They told him that they told him that they were going to overthrow a communist that was already taking over I think they probably told him that he was a Jewish communist, because they think they were riding on FDR's second in command was Henry Morgenthau Jr. and he was deeply aligned with the Jewish, the rich Jewish kind of powers in the world at that day.
Really? And who is Trump aligned himself with? Who is J.D. Vance aligned himself with? Who are the backers, the financial backers of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, and the Democrat Party as well? Who are the backers? Oh, the Miriam Adelsons and the Sheldon Adelsons of the world?
And there was a lot of anti-Jewish sentiment back then. And so I suspect that they told Smedley Butler that this guy's a Jewish plant and he's part of the Rothschild thing, and he's a communist, we need to overthrow him. And Smedley didn't buy it. Smedley collected research on them and he went to FDR and he exposed the whole plot. But the problem was that FDR couldn't do anything, because these people, titans of industry, like the Bushes of the world, the Fords, I don't even know all their names at this point. It's been a while since I did that dig. He couldn't do anything. And so nothing happened. He couldn't charge them because they just said, you just got out of the Great Depression. We will fuck your economy up. Done.
So they pretty much ended the conversation right after this right here. Joe Rogan saying, hey, you blew my mind. But one of the things that I will mention in a video after this is that he did a plug for Eric Prince's Israeli Defense Forces unplugged phone. If you know who this guy is, he is the just American billionaire best known for founding the notorious private military firm Blackwater, which became globally infamous for killing Iraqi civilians and threatening U.S. government investigators, was pushing Unplugged, a smartphone startup promising free speech, privacy, and security untethered from dominant tech giants like Apple and Google. And Ian Carroll pushed the IDF Eric Prince smartphone.
I'm at the point where I'm starting to get I'm not literally that paranoid, but I've had some conversations in terms of people that want to leak a story, which I normally just avoid because I don't want to touch it. But every now and then I'm like, let's go on a walk, because I don't want to hear what you have to say around any of this shit, because I know it's being recorded. I know 100%. It can be listened to.
Do you have a crazy phone or you use a regular
No, it's just
phone?
an iPhone. Yeah. I'm aspiring to get one of those, one of the Eric Prince phones or something like that.
That's when you've reached the next level of conspiracy, when you get a de-Googled phone that doesn't have 5G, you'll use 4.
Yeah.
Leave your thoughts about this. Do you feel like I'm being too critical? If you do, let me know in the comment section below. But I think if you're going to expose one set of billionaires who live in a world completely different from ours, then how can you not link the other billionaires? How can you have favoritism toward one set of billionaires like the Elon Musks and the Palantirs, the Peter Thiels, the Miriam Adelsons, and yet speak in condemnation of the Bill Gates and the Bibi Netanyahus of the world? What am I missing here? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Send this to Ian Carroll. Maybe he's got some answers. I hear Derek Bros at the end of the month is going to have another sit-down interview with Ian Carroll. And a lot of these questions really have to be answered, because if you're going to tell us one group of billionaires is not on our side and another group of billionaires is on our side, you got a lot of splaining to do. I will see you in the next video.